Hey guys, I want to show you this infestation block of Acacia saligna here. So I'll explain to you the design and what infestation is. So infestation basically is using one plant that we know grows really well with very little water, that is adapted to the conditions of your soil. So you don't even have to add any amendments to the soil to plant these plants. In this case, Acacia saligna. It's a very tough plant, so I think there's no problem with it surviving in these conditions. We don't need to add any fertility to it. We just need to have irrigation here. It's really important because really here, none of the plants can actually survive and thrive without irrigation, apart from succulent plants, cactus and all that. So yeah, the idea with infestation is that we're just using this one plant. We can use two plants maybe, but in my case there I'm just using one because I know it's the most adapted to the conditions. And then we'll prune it 2 years from now, 3 years from now, once it's grown enough. And then we use the biomass of these species to then increase the fertility on site. And then we plant in our later succession species down the line after cycling the biomass of these trees a few times. So yeah, that's what we're trying out. This design here actually came from my friend Scott Hall. He has this platform called the Pathway to Regeneration on Mighty Networks. Really interesting. It's very cheap to actually join and you could learn a lot from that. But he's been like pioneering this technique, using this word. He coined the term and all, and we're just trying it out here in the Mediterranean climate. So let me switch the camera and I'll show you what it is. I'll show you what the design is, and I'll show you what plants are planted in there as well, because there's a couple more plants that are going to be planted with the acacias as well. So let me show you. So what you can see here is 5 lines of acacias. The acacias are planted every meter. You can see here, second one's there. And then we have 2 meters in between the lines. And these lines are only 10 meters long. It's just a trial really. Right, so I just rototilled this. Would have been much easier with a tractor, much faster, but that's what we had at the moment. We don't have a tractor yet. But yeah, 5 lines, 2 meter spacing in between. And then what we did with the acacias here is that we added a little bit of wood chip here from carob branches we did some flail mowing on. And then yeah, that will just keep the moisture in, make sure that no weeds come in there, and the soil dries out really fast at this time of the year when it gets really hot and the sun is hitting, so it really helps to keep the moisture in. We're gonna add some irrigation every meter. And also what we did here is we planted these little succulent plants called tree aeoniums that work really well in this climate. They don't need any water whatsoever, and I've had some in 1 year that have grown like that. So hopefully that fills in the space and it allows these acacias to have a little bit more moisture for free, because these are just propagated from cutting. And here actually I'm considering putting cuttings of what we call the ice plant, another succulent plant that crawls. I'll show you a video of it. Just add the cuttings in there because it doesn't need any water, but with water it will grow more. So hopefully it will create a little mat around the acacia to protect it. For free as well, easy to propagate from cutting. And also what we did, even though it wasn't the ideal time, is we planted some broad beans here in between to shade the weeds. But I think what's going to happen here is they're just going to go to seed, and then you're just going to let the seeds fall on the ground, and then next year they'll probably sprout and protect the acacias again, because they might not grow so much this year since we planted them in March. If we did in October, would have been a big difference, I'm sure. So yeah, you can see. So the idea with the design is that actually these 2 lines to the right side and these 2 lines to the left side, we'll take all the biomass from them once they touch and once we start pruning them, which hopefully would be 2 years from now. I hope. Plants are quite slow in this climate. So we're going to take the biomass of both rows here and both rows here. I'm going to add it to the middle here. And we're also going to prune these and then also add the biomass to that row. So that should add a lot of biomass here. And then in the future, after cycling the systems for like 2, 3, 4, 5 times, depending on how much biomass we have and how much we see the fertility of the soil improved, then we'll be able to plant our later succession species, which means our fruit trees, could be olives, could be almonds, could be carobs, anything like that. And then we already have the irrigation in. So it means that since we have the irrigation every meter, we just need to switch it to be in the middle between the acacias, and then we prune the acacias hard. And on a growth pulse, we end up planting our fruit trees and our later succession species, such as eucalyptus, grevillea, myoporum, viburnum, all of these. And then we just use the power of the plants themselves, and we don't even need to add any amendments. So really this is about using the power of the plants that we know grow well with very little irrigation, and then using that power rather than relying on inputs. It's really very much process based. It's fully process based really. Just need to do a good soil preparation here. Just dug holes of like 50 centimeters deep for the acacias. Should be fine with that. And then the roots will actually decompact the soil even more from there. So the plants should just do all the groundwork. And also all the grass that is here is going to be added onto the middle row. So imagine the amount of fertility that will come up from this. Also take into consideration that when we plant on a growth pulse, we prune all the lines, but then these lines continue producing biomass, the other ones are in between. And even the middle line was to have the acacias producing biomass and root exudates there until they phase out, and then the other plants of higher succession take over. But it means the plants are directly sheltered straight away for the first summer. So that really adds a lot of protection for all the higher succession species, so really important. And then we continue on that process for years until the acacias on the other lines become a problem for fruit trees. Then they phase out, but then that might take another 5 years. So these rows here might produce biomass with acacias for more than 10 years before they phase out. But this is really difficult to give you a timeline for that, because we have to see the effect of adding that biomass on the ground, how fast it improves the fertility, and yeah, as well, we just have to see how fast the acacias end up growing really. So that we'll have to see, but that's the idea. People think that there might be a problem with like the root systems of the acacias. There's no problem. I just use a metal bar here, and then I break up the roots and then plant there in the middle of the acacias. It shouldn't be a problem. And really it isn't only about the biomass, because then you're also planting on a growth pulse, which releases a lot of root exudates from the acacias. And then you end up having your later succession species like start on a very good note, and they have protection from the first year, as I'm saying. So that makes a massive difference. So really trying this out to be able to see if we can scale it up. And I think with this, it will make regeneration work much less expensive. Whereas if you're doing a plant all at once, where you plant all your species of like earlier and later succession together, you got to water as much as what the later succession species need. And that is not feasible in every part of the world. It's not feasible in every place. Here, for example, we're on a hill. Like down in the lowlands, there you got plenty of water, but here we don't. So really we need to do with the amount of water that we have. And I think this technique will be the most feasible for the amount of water that we have, although it will take more patience. Some people think that there's a problem with less diversity from the start, but in reality, what we are lacking here in this climate is the biomass. We have very little trees around. You can see all the hills behind there. There's not much biomass being produced. Same with straw bales. Some years we get really very little wheat growth and oat growth, and same, as I say, with all perennials and trees. So they don't grow that much in this climate from year to year. So really this is what we're lacking. The diversity will be added later with the later succession species. So we're starting with 2 species here only, the aeoniums and the acacias. But then in the future, it'll be 5, 6 different species of different families in there. Imagine if you're able to do that every year, 3 hectares at a time or 5 hectares at a time. This is incredible. And then you just let it be like that. You just have to prune. And pruning doesn't take that long actually in these very simplified systems, because you're only dealing with 1 species and you cut it all at the same level. So it makes the work much faster, much more efficient. You don't need to look out for other plants that you might damage when you're pruning these plants. You know, you don't have to like give more space for the other plants, which is just incredible, makes the work much faster. And then you're able to manage an hectare in very little amount of time. So that's really, I think, a very pioneering thing that we're doing here. And I must say thanks to Scott Hall for giving us this idea here and this design. And I'm really looking forward to see how much these plants grow over the next few years, and really looking forward to that first cycling of the biomass and see how much we can accumulate on that middle row there. All right, hope you enjoyed that one. Hope you learned something valuable. Drop some questions and feedback in the comments below.